I am so excited to be here in this beautiful new School of Education building, speaking to all of you. As Isabel mentioned, I'm Denise Pope. I'm a senior lecturer here, and I happen to be at the right time, at the right place to start researching AI, even though my kids think that's hysterical because I still need their help sometimes to do IT work. I co-founded Challenge Success over 20 years ago to partner with schools and communities to really center the student experience of school and to improve K-12. And one of the things I studied was student stress and academic integrity issues in schools. So I had lots and lots of longitudinal data to think about its connection to student engagement and student well-being and student belonging. And so when ChatGPT was widely released in November 2022, I decided to partner with Victor Lee and the Stanford Accelerator for Learning to study the effect of this new thing in school, not just on academic integrity, but also how it relates to how students engage or not with their learning. And so since then, Victor and his team and Challenge Success and my team have been looking really closely at how teachers and students are using AI at the classroom level. And we work with schools to help them consider effective interventions and policies. And now, this morning, I'm excited to talk with Randy to get an even broader picture of AI policy and implementation at the state level here in California. So I am really excited to introduce Randy. We are honored to have Randy here. She serves as Senior Advisor for Technology to Governor Gavin Newsom. In this role, she leads Newsom's tech policy, including AI, digital infrastructure, cybersecurity, child online safety, and other related topics, which is big. Prior to joining the governor's office, she served in the Biden administration at the White House National Security Council as Director for Technology and Democracy, as well as Director for International Cyber Policy. Randy previously worked as an election security advisor at the U.S. Department of State, including tours in D.C., Kenya, and the Philippines. So Randy really knows what she's talking about. She received her JD from Yale Law School and her BA from Harvard, that little university across the way. So Randy, thank you for being here. Welcome, welcome. Since the title of this year's summit is the inflection point, my first question to you is this moment fundamentally different from past education or technology waves in your mind? And if so, why?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a real thrill to be here. As even though my bio may suggest otherwise, I am a big fan of Stanford. So thank you for having me.
We're happy to hear that. That's good.
And I also want to just preface this by saying that while I'm thrilled to share the governor's vision on AI and education, I really am here to hear from you all, and especially the educators and students that are really on the front lines of this conversation and tackling the challenges and taking advantage of the opportunities that AI poses in classrooms. So thank you for having me. Thank you for sharing your wisdom here. And hopefully I can help provide some broad sort of strategic framework to contextualize the rest of today's conversation. To your question about the inflection point today, I think in a similar way that don't have to tell anyone here this, that AI poses something fundamentally different than prior technologies when we had the invention of the blackboard, the chalkboard, the invention of the calculator, the invention of internet, and now of AI. They each have fundamentally changed the way that learning and teaching works, but in very different ways. So if you start with just the fundamental chalkboard, you switched from individualized education to a broad-based classroom teaching. Calculator, there was a time when we were all saying, everyone's gonna forget how to do math. We're not gonna be able to do any math anymore, it's being all done for you. But it switched from just understanding how to add or calculate numbers to really understanding the theory and the reasons behind it, having to show those proofs that I really hated doing in high school math. And then you shift to internet, and I think all of us here remember there was an era where people said Wikipedia is going to ruin education. Yeah. We're not going to be able to do research anymore. We're not going to be able to teach our children. They're just going to have all the answers right in front of us. But really what it did is shift the type of teaching from being able to identify facts to being able to really analyze and consolidate and apply, and the real sort of cognitive thinking that that you all here at Stanford are so good at teaching. And it no longer is helpful to know the year that a war started or to know the birth date of a president, because you can look that up so easily. And I think AI, as you all know, presents something fundamentally different while also continuing that thread where there has been concerns over the years around the impacts of technology on teaching. And those concerns have in many ways been addressed and ameliorated by the very thoughtful educators and policymakers in this room. And so I do think that it's important not to catastrophize what we have here today, but at the same time, AI is capable of a degree of analysis and cognitive capabilities that we didn't see previously, which begs the question of what's next. If all of these inventions to date have brought us to the point where we've really been focusing on the analytics and the sort of cognitive load, then what is the next step if that's not a purely human function? And I think that is what I'm curious to hear from you all, but I do think there's a question about what kind of sort of checks do we need to have where humans need to be able to understand, is this thing that the AI is telling me, is it right? Is it biased in some way? What are the what's the broader context here? Is it missing something? But then what does that mean in terms of preparing our students to be able to flourish and thrive in the working world? Does it mean, even just a few months or years ago, we were saying we need to do more training for prompt engineering. And now most of the prompt engineering is done by AI. And so thinking about what does that mean on a practical level? What are the skills that are going to be most useful? Perhaps it's the interpersonal skills, it's the public speaking skills, it's the human relationship side, which would fundamentally change some of the STEM focus, for example, that we've had over the years. And so I think these are still evolving conversations that need to be had, and part of the reason why events like today are so important.
I hear you. Yes to all. Larry Cuban would be very proud of that walk through history from the chalkboard on up. He's absolutely saying the same thing. He's a professor emeritus here at Stanford. So
maybe I'm just trying to justify my own liberal arts degree.
I think maybe. What was your major?
Social studies, which is like a social theory.
Larry Cuban would be even more proud. Yeah. So, okay. So as we think about this, walk us through some of the things you're doing and working on with the governor and your team to think about the role of policy and given that things are moving at the pace that they're moving and we're sort of building the plane while we're flying it, which typically happens after a new innovation. How's California leading in defining responsible, human-centered AI in education for the country?
The governor really likes to talk about how we are both promoting innovation and protecting the safety and well-being of Californians. I think it's really important to note that those two things are not mutually incompatible. I think there's often a conversation where you have to choose one or the other. But in California, we have shown and proven that you can, in fact, do both. And there are actually regulations that are common sense guardrails that, in fact, promote innovation. I think one really important historical example here is that one of the reasons why Silicon Valley, where we are here today, in addition to the presence of Stanford and other educational institutions, is that California had restrictions on non-compete clauses in contracts. And so employees that had an idea from their prior business were able to leave those previous professions and start a business here because they didn't have the non-compete contracts in their employment contracts. And so that led to this amazing innovation ecosystem in Silicon Valley where, again, because of, among other things, that regulation. And so that is the sort of ethos that we think about these issues. But that regulation has to be smart, and it has to be deliberate, and it has to find that balance, and that's challenging. I also want to just give a broad overview about how we're thinking about AI policy writ large. We're really operating under sort of 3 core pillars. The first is modernizing government service delivery, leveraging AI to improve the way that government both does the sort of back of house operations. How do we do our own permits? How do we do our own sort of filing, like all of the non-sexy things, but the things that really make government work better? To how do we use AI to improve customer experience in call centers, where, for example, we issued a pilot on leveraging AI to support the tax call center, where it helps the individuals at the call center be able to get the answer for the customer as quickly as possible. And so we're really delving as deeply as possible into exploring, again, not all use cases need AI, but there are some certain instances, and we are continuing to explore what those look like, and doing that, again, with rights and safety in mind, where we have extensive risk mitigation measures in place, and we have extensive collaboration with labor through that process. The second sort of bucket that we think about is on promoting the innovation economy and also empowering workers to thrive in an economic and technological transition. Part of this work has included, for example, the governor last summer announced new partnerships with Google, Microsoft, IBM, and Adobe, and the year prior with NVIDIA to support AI training, both in the CSU systems, the community college systems, and in Adobe's case, 9 through 12 education. And the idea here is that we need to make sure that our workers and our students are set up to excel and to thrive in an economy that really will require understanding how to leverage AI. And then the third area is in protecting vulnerable communities, protecting rights and safety, and making sure that, especially that we're protecting the well-being of Californians. This includes extensive work on protecting child safety. The governor signed a number of bills last year, including a new companion chatbot bill that requires certain disclosures of suicide risk and self-harm by companion chatbot companies. It requires reporting to the California Department of Public Health, and a number of other restrictions. We're also very focused on privacy. The governor last year signed the first ever browser-wide opt-out bill, which will require browsers to have essentially a single click where you can, rather than having all of those very annoying pop-ups that come every single website, you can just toggle your browser once to say that you opt out of third-party cookie sharing. And we actually just launched a new drop platform where you can, again, with a single click, opt out of data brokers tracking and selling your data. So really thinking about this from the broad spectrum, and then as it applies to education, I think it really cuts across all 3 of those categories, where we need to empower our educational institutions to leverage AI to improve all of their sort of operational efficiencies, some of the things that the administrators and teachers here know far better than I do, but I'm sure are not fun parts of your job, that we've really seen AI support some of these back of house operations, to making sure that we are empowering students and teachers and workers to understand how to use AI, and then also that we are making sure that we're protecting rights and safety. And I'm happy to talk about some more examples here, but that's the sort of broad framework we're thinking about.
On behalf of everyone here, I'm saying thank you. Thank you for some of the little things like those opt-outs, right? And thank you for thinking like but broader than just how we're using it in the government, how, really understanding that we need your help. So we appreciate that. And that's kind of a segue to the role of research. So you've got researchers in the room. How are you, or are you and your team, and if so, how are you using research and learning science to help shape some of these policies and some of the strategy?
So the governor feels very strongly that our policy needs to be rooted in expertise, in fact. It's one of the reasons why a couple of years ago now, the governor commissioned a report by Stanford, Berkeley, Carnegie Endowment, and others on frontier AI safety. And that report, led by Dr. Fei-Fei Li of Stanford, among others, has laid the foundation for SB 53, which is, as many of you know, the first in the country AI safety legislation that includes various transparency and disclosure requirements for large language models and for frontier AI systems. And so we really value the expertise of that evidence-based policymaking. The governor launched just a few months ago, back in November, the Governor's Innovation Council, which brings together a range of academic experts, think tanks, advocates who really are deeply, have a deep expertise in 4 key areas: modernizing government service delivery, promoting the innovation economy, combating tech-enabled fraud, and protecting child online safety. And so we are thrilled to have a number of Stanford professors as part of that group, and really leaning on them to be able to advise policymakers, to collaborate with us on a range of initiatives that I'm happy to delve more deeply into. And finally, I have a number of colleagues here today at events like this. We really value this kind of input. And so again, just very grateful for your collaboration, both today and moving forward.
If you have some research that you want to do, or ideas for research, right? This is your opportunity to talk to Randy. What, if, as it comes to mind, is there some big piece that's missing that you would love to see us kind of dig into as researchers?
I think as we are still figuring out how all of this works, how AI can best be leveraged in the classroom, how we protect our students' privacy, our students' well-being, I would love to see more pilots that then we have actual clinical data of how this works in the real world. And it's still early, so it's understandable that that hasn't been as readily available, but we actually are working with the California Department for Public Health on a pilot that will deliver an AI literacy curriculum that includes both how how teachers and school administrators should teach about sort of understanding how to use AI, but also the sort of rights and safety components of it. How do we help classrooms deal with mental health impacts, with cyberbullying, with the issues around cognitive decline, with the issues around deepfake pornography and non-consensual intimate imagery and child sexual abuse material. And so we're looking to pilot that in classrooms in the state, hopefully in the next at some point in this year. And we're really excited to get more data. And if there are other pilots or other sort of data from actually implementing interventions, that would be extremely valuable to us.
I think there's many folks in here who are nodding and saying yes, and we're here to help and talk to you. So that's great. Isabel listed a whole bunch of things that we should be worried about. You just named a whole bunch of things that we should be worried about around mental health, around safety, protection, cognitive offloading. We have environmental issues, we have bias, we have so many things. What keeps you personally up at night? Like, what's the number one, like, if we do anything, I got to make sure this doesn't happen?
I think personally, and this is not necessarily reflective of the governor. I don't know what out of all of these different issues is the governor's necessarily priority, and I think the answer is probably we are addressing all of these issues, and they're all very important at the same time while balancing the opportunities that these tools provide. But I think one of the issues that doesn't get talked about as much in the educational context in particular is just the proliferation of non-consensual intimate imagery in schools. I think the latest data from a 2023 Thorn survey said that 1 in 8 of young people know someone who was personally victimized. I think it's 1 in 16 were personally victimized by non-consensual intimate imagery, and that was almost 3 years ago. And as we know, the technology has rapidly evolved, and these tools are increasingly easy to use. It's part of the reason why the governor signed last year new legislation allowing for private right of action against non-consensual intimate imagery. Also, in California, CSAM, AI-generated CSAM is illegal, just like any other form of CSAM, but it's not something that I think we talk about enough in these contexts. I would like to do better to empower schools to sort of understand how to deal with these kinds of issues, particularly when the perpetrator is also a minor, and what is the appropriate recourse. And if you are a victim, again, I don't need to tell all of you, but if you're a victim to cyberbullying through deepfake pornography, it not only is a well-being and mental health risk, but it also impedes learning. And it's so important that we protect our children from this kind of both illegal and I think unethical behavior.
Yeah. We know so much that you can't learn if you don't feel safe. It's all neurologically intertwined, right? Social, emotional, cognitive links. So that's huge. And I'm really glad that it's on the radar screen for policy, and hopefully maybe with that new partnership with the Department of Health too, as they're thinking about rolling out the lessons. So what should be, if that's regulated, what should be regulated now as you think about the future? I think there's people who think, well, once the genie's let out of the bottle, it's really hard to bring it back in. What do you think?
So I think this technology is rapidly changing. We are both trying to get ahead, trying to keep up, and we have to be able to iterate as we get more data, as we better understand how to protect children, how to empower children. And so I think it's a little nihilistic to think about like we have to do everything now, and if we don't do it now, we'll never be able to do it in the future, because we have to continue to iterate and to learn. And I think we saw this with phone-free schools, that even though people thought the genie was out of the bottle and that we're never going to be able to get phones out of the classroom, we've seen it take hold across the state and increasingly across the country. And at least from what I've heard, and I look forward to hearing more from you all, that it's been a resounding success. And so I think it's a little too fatalistic to say that there's a point when we've reached the point past no return, the point of no return, and that we should be consistently learning and consistently improving upon our approach, both on the sort of education positive perspective and on the regulatory sort of protective point of view.
So both, and I like the example of the cell phones that, they're not back in the bottle, but we're working on at least curbing and educating. So who do you think should lead at this moment? We have the state, we have research, we have the market. Whose voices are you paying, can I say, most attention to? I don't know if that's a fair question, but who should lead?
I think the answer is all of the above, and I'd add a couple of other really key stakeholders. I think we really need to listen to educators and school administrators. We really need to listen to students themselves.
Yes. Yay.
And we really need to listen to parents that are going through this and trying to figure out how to adapt to new kinds of learning. And through the Innovation Council, we are working with some nonprofits to explore ways to more have a better structure to feeding in those voices, and particularly students' voices, into our efforts. And so hopefully more to come there shortly, but it's something that we are very focused on to make sure that we're not just listening to the advocates or just listening to industry, but that it's really a cohesive effort that's grounded in expertise and in real world experience.
Lots of students in the audience. Randy wants to hear from you, so don't mob her all at once at the end here. But okay, we're going to start to wrap up here. What guiding principle you think should anchor every AI policy decision? What's a guiding principle that you're holding on to?
I think it's just to reiterate the points I made earlier, which is, one, we need a balance between opportunity and risk mitigation. It can't be all or nothing. And two, we have to learn from and engage with the students and educators themselves. And three, we have to be evidence-based and really understand what works and what doesn't. And so I think that is, again, why I'm really thrilled to be here today and look forward to hearing from you all. And really do encourage you, as I said earlier, that if there's either research that you want to share, if you have ideas of how policymakers can do better, please do not hesitate to reach out. We really do want to hear from you.
What gives me hope is you clearly know what you're talking about. You're using evidence, you're thinking this through. You don't seem to be sort of, on this mission one way or the other, a lot of balance. One thing that you and I talked about before we came on stage is the governor's really knowledgeable in this area too. And you said that makes your job easy and hard, right? So if you think about this, I do think about California as a leader. How do you think about California as a leader at this particular inflection point around sort of this AI and the future for learning?
I think the proof is in the pudding that we really are leading the charge here, whether it's with the age signaling legislation that the governor signed last year that provided a truly novel way of making sure that parents have the opportunity to control the kinds of content that their kids see on their phones, and to SB 53 that provides the first in the country guardrails on frontier AI systems, to the AI and Education working group that the state superintendent is leading that was based on legislation from last year, where we're really soliciting input from all stakeholders, from industry, from schools and educators, from academic experts, to issue guidelines for schools, model policies to help local school districts be able to better both leverage the opportunities of AI, again, which include everything from being able to better address individualized learning disabilities to making sure that there's potential to bridge some of the digital divide and sort of help support schools that maybe are under-resourced, to, again, being able to support educators with some of the less desirable parts of their job, to things like performance-based grading and evaluations. And so there really is a lot of opportunity here that we're excited to leverage in partnership with these companies that I mentioned as well. And then we're also very focused on mitigating the potential risks that we've talked about. And so I think we're leading the charge on both sides of the coin, and in no small part because of institutions like Stanford that really I think the thing that is the special sauce here in California are the partnerships that we have here. We have all the companies, we have the amazing world-renowned research institutions. I mean, this is the place where things are happening, and we are so thrilled to be able to leverage those partnerships to make sure that we continue to lead the country and the world in this space.
I mean, I think that's why we're here today, too. So, Randy, this has been a breath of fresh air to talk to a politician who knows what they're talking about, who looks at science, who wants to get lots of voices in the room, who wants to spend the day listening and gathering input to make some really thoughtful legislation that both helps folks innovate and do what can be done with the new technology, and yet also very carefully is looking at safety and understand some of the other mitigating issues. So on behalf of everyone here, I just want to thank you so much. It's been lovely, and we appreciate you and all that the governor is doing.
Well, likewise, thank you. Thank you for having me.